So Track Stitch podcast coming up. It is the Track Stitch Christmas special as Shano and I unwrap some presents that are under the tree. What are they? It's a secret. You're going to have to stick around. First, Track Stitch Band.
Champion, Riders bearing down on top of Ngugi. Ngugi digs deep and he's got no ball. And Andrew Lloyd wins it again.
Récupéré ensuite chez lui au Maroc à Ifrane.
La Web, il est parti à la Web, il a tenté le coup du siècle là.
Oui,
Surprendre tout le monde au 800.
Final of the men's 10,000 meters in 19.
Stop the ball out. Oh, it looks to be. Who else is in the race? The wave is there. The confidence is there.
Recording the podcast Saturday, December the 20th, 21st in Auckland, New Zealand at the headquarters. Shano, the week before Christmas. Are you excited?
I'm tired from my day job and I'm looking for a break, but looking forward to a break. But yeah, nah, mate, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Exciting festive time of the year. Yeah, I've got the little Christmas tree here, the snow globe going on. I remember you've got the house decked out with the trees as well.
I do. No thanks to me. Yeah.
Hey, so like I said, literally in the intro, we don't really know exactly what we're going to talk about today. We've just got a number of things going on. They're like wrapped presents under the tree. We're going to crack them open. Hopefully they're not a pair of shitty socks that you don't want to wear. It's actually something of value. I'm quite excited about this.
It's a real boomer gift, the socks, when you get the stocking and it feels soft and you're like, it's not, is it? And you open it. And
It always is. Or the
one you can't even. I don't mind a fresh pair of Smugglers, a pair of freshies for Christmas. It's quite nice having fresh underpants, but the socks, particularly if the boomers have bought it and they've got this horrible decoration or something on it, you have to only a winter sock.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's just let's unwrap some of these gifts and see what we've got. First thing we should touch on, last night. Well, I'm pretty sure we're going to be the first podcast in the world. We're the first podcast in the world of track and field to address a number of topics, as we know that we are the people's podcast, maybe like the fifth or sixth best athletics podcast on the interweb. But the Daikin Night of Fives, run by our very good friend Paul Hamlin, went off last night, and of course, like the major event or the main event of the evening was the 5K, where the most prodigious young talent in recent memory, maybe globally, Sam Ruthe was running the 5K, and the results are in. Now, we had a bit of a prediction contest, didn't we? Actually, you, myself, we kind of had one on the side, and then we involved PC in it. On the side chat, our good friend Phil Clode was on the pod a couple of weeks ago, and you were victorious. But can you remember what was your prediction? Because I wrote it down here.
I believe Phil was 13:26.
Yeah.
You were 13:34.
I think it's backwards, but it's 13:34.15. That was my prediction.
Yeah, and I believe I was 13:42. Yeah.
Well, so much for that. I mean, not far off, because he ran 13:40.48 last night, New Zealand junior record.
Mind blowing.
What exactly? Yeah. What are your thoughts? I mean, looking just a little bit at the race, I didn't watch the whole race. I sort of woke up this morning and just cranked on the final kilometer. Didn't look like the most ideal conditions there. I think it was like that classic Auckland, New Zealand, early summer, right, where conditions where it's kind of windy and a little bit cool with the sea breeze. But yeah. 13:40. What's your first take on that?
Well, I think it's clearly phenomenal. I mean, that Wagner kid who beat him at Crossy, was 14:29, which in and of itself is a fantastic time for a schoolboy.
Yeah,
I think Sam Ruthe is 16 and he can run 13:40 for 5K. And something I said to you and Phil, prior in our message chat before he ran, I said I hope he doesn't run too quick for a slightly on a sort of slightly perverse basis, because if he ran, say, 13:20 or 13:18 or something like that, I would think his upside in 8 and 1500 is more limited because he was using an incredible aerobic profile to fuel those times. So he was sort of, I think, I don't think if you're running 13:18 and you're a 146 guy, then I think
Right.
you're not, you're ceiling. But I think I went back at the chat and I looked at it. I said I would hope he'd be about 1340 odd, which means and I sent you that screenshot of Niels Laros's progression through in the 5,000, admittedly not running them lots. I said I think it's a similar profile, and I think it turned out to be pretty accurate in terms of where he's sitting. And I think there's an enormous aerobic ability, but massive room for improvement as well. So it's incredibly exciting. And he looked great too at that rhythm. He didn't look, some of these real quicker guys, you were probably like that, Jason. When they run at a slower clip, they tend to shuffle a bit because it's sort of the pace is beneath them. They look a bit shuffly, but he looked fluent. He looked kind of like LG-like or Steve Ovett-like. He looked very comfortable. So no, I was really impressed. But like I am every time he steps on the track. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously an amazing time. New Zealand under 20 record. I think was Richard Potts still the holder of that one, at least outdoors? I believe maybe Christian de Waal, the young, another young, very talented athlete from New Zealand. He may have run slightly faster, or he might have run faster than Potts' time indoors, and I think Sam's beaten that as well. I think also of note in that race, we should give out some dap to Sam Tanner here, because those guys were together and obviously Tanner's older, just has that more inherent strength just from being older. He's been a pro athlete now for 4 or 5 seasons. 13:36.4, but the manner in which he did it was actually really impressive. Like really big last 200. He got the chopsticks whirring there in the final 150, and him and Sam were together with 200 meters to go for all intents and purposes, and he looked really good. So I wonder if this is also a sign that he's maybe going to move up and focus more on the 5K, kind of as his career is. I think it's fair to say it's maybe crested, and we're on the downs. I say down slope in a bad way, but you know what I'm saying, right? He's probably on the back half of his career, so. Pretty good performance there by Tanner, because obviously Sam Ruth's in shape and he's running extremely quick right now. So that was really promising. But
It was a great run. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hayden Wild, I think a lot of people also expect this also points to the quality of the race in general. A lot of people thought maybe Hayden Wild was the favorite to win this one, and he just probably a little bit fatigued from all his triathlon exploits.
And he had that accident as well.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, one other performance too. We can round out on it soon, but I saw this one as well. The men's 800 meters, Joe Martin. Did you see that one? 148.25. New PR for him. Kind of, I would say similar situation to myself, because I ran my first sub 149 race at the end after my 7th form year at high school. So I did that in the January after I graduated from high school. So he is in a similar situation, 148.25, and he's about to head off to North Carolina, which is a great program for him to be heading towards. That's obviously the program where Ethan Strand, Parker Wolf were at over in the US. So really nice way for him to finish up, I think, his time in New Zealand, because I'm sure he'll be heading over to the US soon.
I think he can run based off how that race was run, and he made a lot of the running. I think he can run at least 147.50, maybe 147.2 over in a big pack in the States, probably right now.
Yep, and
that's my feel based off
in 6 months.
Yeah, he's good. He's doesn't look overdeveloped. He's got nice mover. It's exciting. There's so many of these great young athletes out there. Daisy Ruthe, 2:13.
Yeah.
How old is she? I don't know, 14 or something? 13
or 14. Yeah.
I think she ran 4th. What'd she run? Is it Tony Hodgkinson's record still, that 4:29? I believe it is.
Yeah.
Junior girl, she ran low 4:30, 4:31, 4:32.
Yeah.
That's not much. I think I ran like 4:35 when I was 3rd form. So she's running
probably the same as me.
About the same. She's great. She's got that raking stride. Yeah. It's a
Yeah, I mean,
factory down there in Tauranga.
it is. And that she's going to be one to watch too. Like the whole sort of younger sibling theory.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, she's just in the wings watching these sorts of things, and like I'm pretty sure she'll just be frothing to, like, you know, get up to the level of her older brother, who's like a big role model for her. And no,
Yeah.
that's really exciting. And it's,
She's
you know,
great.
especially on the woman's side as well. It is, you know, you have to say it is a little bit easier to break through. Not quite the same depth of talent as on the men's side. So
Yeah, I think the thing there is that particularly the African woman in the last decade, perhaps through some societal changes, are getting a bit more of a bite at the cherry, and the top level is
right.
way higher than it was 10 or
Yes.
20 years ago, which was way higher than it was 20 years before that.
Totally.
However, the depth, when you peel it back in terms of some of the women that can get to championships versus the equivalent at the men's side, is lower. And, you know, people might not like us saying that, but that's
it's true.
that's a fact. So you're right. The ability to get through to that international level, the chance of getting through there is appreciably higher to get through.
Yes.
Having said that, those top women now are such guns that there's that massive disparity even in a world championship final between, say, those top women
Right.
and then it almost like two packs develops in a lot of
Yes.
those distance races. So it's exciting. It's great.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess wrapping up with this race last night in Sam Ruthe, just off the 13:35.85, I believe that Jakob Ingebrigtsen ran at 16 years of age. I mean, obviously Sam Ruthe, if they want to go after that time, if it matters to them, he's still got a few more months. I believe his birthday's in April. But either way, to be just within a handful of seconds of the guy who went on to win the Olympic 5,000 meters is a pretty promising sign at this age. And to your point as well, with that 800 meter speed and 1,500 meter chops already in the bank, that's really promising.
Well, here's one for you.
Yeah.
And you know, it's impossible not to get caught up in the hype. And we talked around the sort of cautionary aspect of how much
Yes.
focus is on this kid. But if you actually just pause that for a moment and look at the facts, I mean, if he is doing a lot of training, and we don't actually know the exact details, but he's not training twice a week, but he's, you know, I don't know how much he's doing, but he certainly isn't doing he's more training than Jakob was doing at both at that age and from a young age, given this sort of psychotic background that Jakob grew up in.
Yes.
So he's definitely undertrained compared to Jakob. If he's within a hair's breadth of his 5K time, that's incredibly exciting in terms of his upside. He's definitely a more powerful athlete in terms of his 800, 1,500 anaerobic ability than Jakob's ever been. You know, Jakob couldn't have run that fast. But in fact, I believe he didn't, even though a lot of, you know, he wouldn't have run a lot of 800s. He's not that same type of athlete. He's more of a, So that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Just, I don't know if you mentioned this. What do you think? I mean, obviously the conditions we saw, I mentioned it, they didn't look super ideal. Paul tried to push the race back as far as he possibly could to get it off. Like, you know, 13:40 in those conditions, it does make a difference over 5K, especially when you're going around the track 12 and a half times. I mean, you know, we can if button maybe here, but I think it's probably fair to say in a big pack paced, a really well paced race, maybe even with wave light, for example, close to 13:30 right now. Yeah.
I think the more important point, he'd be eking it out, and you could see that he didn't have that. It didn't appear like he was hanging tough in there, right? And I think it was he's clearly in the shape of his life, and I think it was a pretty optimal run for him. I think the more important point, though, is in 2 or 3 years with more conditioning.
Yes.
Can he get to 13 flat? And I think the answer absolutely is yes, if he continues on this trajectory.
Well, I mean, you and I weren't 5,000 meter runners at all. Like, I didn't even really race one on track. We tried our hand at a few 3Ks. And I mean, I just thought about this. I mean, this was really his first real attempt at a 5,000 meters. And this is the same thing, I think, at play when people are like, hey, if Jakob wants to go for the 5,000 meter world record, he'll just be able to go for it and get. I don't think that's the case, because I think you do need a few. You've got to feel the pain, in particular, say for Sam, right, he'd already run a really good 3K, he'd run 7:56, and he's probably, it's fair to say he's in better shape than that. But you don't actually know the pain of these races over distance until you actually experience them. Like, so for him last night, I totally agree with you. You could, that sort of mile between 3,000 meters, which is a distance he knows that he can perform to a good level over, and 4,600 is so difficult. Like, even though he physically may have been able to hang in there a little bit better, and even maybe had the ability to drive that on, like mentally, it's so tough when you've never done it before. It's kind of like us running the 3K, right? The first mile was always quite comfortable because we also ran the 1,500, to a competent level. But then it's like that next kilometer from a mile through to 400 to go is just so hard when you don't practice it a lot. And I think we got to also take into account that that's really the first time he's even tried over 5K. So in theory, he could come back in a couple of days' time, like just with that practice of having done it and run much faster. Maybe I didn't take that into account in my prediction. I should have been a little bit wiser on that one.
Yeah, I
You
just
showed your
think
chops there.
I just think that the same principles apply to mortals. Like, I won't speak for you, but myself, in terms of how much harder the 5 was than the 3, and coming from an 8:15 background, how much more emotionally difficult and mentally difficult the 5 was than the 3 when you're an 800, 1,500 guy.
Oh, God.
I just think to run that fast, notwithstanding, that difficulty just shows his just immense pedigree. It's crazy to think if you think about this, say he came out of nowhere, right? Like he was in a homeschooled community and he just ran 13:40. Forget the 8 and the 15 exploits. You'd just be like, who's the 16-year-old? Who's a legit 16-year-old? He's not an age group questionable athlete.
No.
He's a 16-year-old and he's run 13:40. You're like, this is the next great sort of New Zealand distance runner. But he's a 146 guy on his own in secondary schools as well. It's
All right. Moving forward, sort of, actually across the Tasman, Cam Myers. Now, I told you haven't seen this result yet, have you? Because he ran a 5 almost in a weird serendipitous coincidence. He ran a 5,000 meters last night as well. Obviously a lot of comparisons between Sam and Cam Myers for good reasons. They're both, Antipodeans like us, both, 8, 15, 3K, 5K runners. What do you reckon?
You should make it a fun exercise. Ask me to guess. I don't know anything about it. Was it at Zetterpeck, was it?
No, it was at Box Hill Invitational. It was like a good quality. I can tell it was a reasonable quality meet, but it wasn't like a big international.
So give me a clue. Who paced him and how far?
Dude, I don't know. No idea. I just saw the result. We don't need to.
Okay. What did he run like? Okay. Did he run 13:06?
Nah, it wasn't. So he ran. You might be surprised then by this because I'll be honest. I thought this may be a bit quicker. He ran 13:32.11, but he won the race quite comfortably. But I tell you one thing I did see that was interesting: 61.7 for the final lap. So he must have really put it out on the line there to try and run a fast time, and then kind of ate proverbial shit in the final 4. But I did see that the weather was extremely hot there because it's crazy hot, as you know, watching the Ashes right now. It's crazy hot in Australia at the moment. So it was apparently close to 30 degrees on the track, which isn't good. Not making excuses for him, but sounds like he did it tough last night.
I think you sold me a great dummy there because the way you talked about it was like, did you see what he ran? And obviously you meant that as in like it's pretty exciting for Sam Ruthe that he's comparable and he's a lot younger. But I was thinking, man, he must have blown the doors off. I was just going to say, like, what did he run? Like 12:58?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So an interesting result
there. That's why I guess sort of 13:40 odd because it's hard too. It's just because they're wonder kids. It doesn't mean that the same kind of convention doesn't apply to say down under. Like I said to you when we were chatting with Phil, like Willis often would run sort of 13:20 between 13:20 and 13:30 when he come back. He was a 3:29 guy, one of the best milers in the world. He'd come back here, and it seems like a kind of a normal year. It just doesn't. It's hard to go out up at bloody Bay's track and 63s. It's just
And I think for Myers as well, he's now an experienced, fairly experienced, crazy because he's also still under the age of 20, a reasonably experienced pro. So he's obviously really focused on the European season, first race of the year. Still a big PR for him by like 17 seconds, but yeah, I mean,
Doesn't
to
bode
put
that
it
well.
into context.
Doesn't bode that well for him though, because unlike Sam, who's got he's got nice running
Power.
form and he's power and explosive, and we've talked about this with Myers, and that's why we don't think it's wise necessarily for, say, the Ruthe camp to get too caught up and trying to knock off, say, Cameron Myers' times. It's like he's in that horrible sort of
Grey zone.
vacuum between the 15 where he just doesn't have the, it's a bit like McSwain. They don't have the power that they need to call on in the championships in terms of that last 200-300. They're vulnerable to like 334 guys, 335 guys, right? So, and that's case in point, the guy who won the world champs was, oh no, he's quicker than that in terms of in a drag race, but he had that to come off the pace, the same way that Jack Whiteman came off the pace. Kerr can come off the pace. So, but Stu Kerr can come, he should come off something, but not the pace. Come off the pace plenty of times. But no, I think that with Myers, it's a little bit discouraging in the sense that he's not. McSwain had another sort of string to his bow, that he was that pure sort of distance runner that could also run fast over 15, and perhaps they got McSwain's event wrong. But it's that with Myers, it's like he needs to be a lot stronger, because I don't believe he's ever going to be a top international 1500 meter runner in championships. He's always going to be. Yeah, he's great, and this is not me being a naysayer.
No, I know what you're saying.
He's phenomenal, but I'm sure he wants to realize his potential in championships, and he doesn't have that gate that to call on, and so he needs to be better over 5,000.
Not
sounds
quite
ridiculous.
Doesn't it doesn't, because it's like he doesn't quite. I mean, we're still going to take into account he's not even 20 yet, but he doesn't. It's like as of today, he doesn't quite have that sort of that high endurance and threshold of the guys over 3K like Nagoose, Hocker, Jakob especially, and even Josh Kerr. But and on the same level, he doesn't have that sort of anaerobic power like a Whiteman does, or even a Josh Hoey, right? So he's kind of stuck in this gray area. Who knows? Like, is it gonna, is that something he can develop, or is it something that you would hope by the age of 20 was starting to show itself like it did with Sam in that 800? Who knows? But either way, interesting results there. Good night of 5,000 meter running down under. Should we open a few more presents, mate? Like, just, I think what we talked about.
Who's going to go first?
Do a few. You can hit me first. Like, I would like to open my presents first. I always liked that when I was young. I had. Did you have the oldest sibling bonus when you were young? Where, because
in what way?
Like when it came to opening the presents under the tree, you're always like, "Oh, I'm the oldest. I should go first." And then mum and dad were just like, "Oh,
perhaps wet behind the ears for that one." And with Erin being the way she being a very special character, I think I should probably gave way.
I was. I was too much of a little shit. I think I probably
pushed for the
liberty too much anyway. But I'll open the first present. So hit me with a question.
Okay, so do you think? And I've got pretty sketchy handwriting, being a goofy left-hander at the best of times. But my question is, so it's going to come out a little bit, maybe like Spiglemi. But okay, so do you think that with the application of the modern approach of double threshold and threshold based training, and it looks like almost the doing away with periodization, do you think that is either positive, neutral, or negative for the 800 meters going forward?
That is a good question. I personally think for the 800 in particular, it's a negative, because I just think that the anaerobic, that you in the 1500 and 3K upwards, I think that this threshold approach is still extremely helpful, and you can still say helpful. That's the wrong word. It's a really good way to run fast times, and I think you can still be effective in championship races, right? Like, you can still, look at what Jakob and Chariot, what they did in like 2021 at Tokyo, right? Like that was that was a pure like kind of threshold race. It's still very difficult to do that in the championship, but you know, the anaerobic component now is just not as high as it had to be in the past. Who knows? Maybe that's changing with, you know, certainly that race that we saw this year. I think in the 800 though, you still need to develop and work on like that anaerobic capacity and that power, right? So when I say the capacity, I'm like, how much room, you know, how much is left in the battery once you've crossed over your threshold point, which you're going to hit, you know, even at best for the best threshold guys in the 8. And I know this is what Justin and all those guys are working on now. It's like how deep can you go into the race without crossing that threshold? You've still got to have that power component. And I think that that's what is really damaging and so difficult about the 800. And I think that that's just something you cannot be touching and plugging on all year, right? Like you really need time. You need a distinct period to develop it, because it's like any kind of training, right? It's like stress, break, recover, improve. Like that's kind of like the cycle. And I just think if you're constantly like trying to tap into it year round, I don't think you can ever really either increase that capacity or actually maximize like your top power output once you are in it. So I just think that the 800 now, you're talking about the guys, you have to run under 143 to be competitive. You have to run under 143 just to even hopefully get into kind of like a diamond league meet. It's so crazy, the level, so much different from our day. So I think that this is not a good thing for the 800 meters. And so I think that it really makes it difficult for the guys that are doing the dual 815 at the moment, because they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where maybe they want to, you know, can just continue this double threshold approach or this kind of like year-round excellence. And this is, I know exactly the key athlete at the center of this is Josh Hoey, right? He's going to be interesting to see because he is, you know, still very much so an 800 runner, even though he's running a good 15, but he just seems to be wanting to go full year round. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see like what's happened. I think we've already seen, Shano, a bit of a change in the guard. And I noticed this in that mile that just happened, the road mile Honolulu. Last year, Jared Nagoose, he won that race. So in December 24, and he looked really good. Like in that race, he looked like really up for it, really fired up. I can't remember the time he ran, but this year he looks so different. And I noticed that like Beamish looked way off his level. I noticed that Nagoose looked way off his level. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, I think these guys, and particularly Jared, have realized that they made mistakes at the end of last year, beginning of this year, in trying to hold fitness for too long. So I think that what's happened is like typically we do this, and I'll stop rambling in a second.
That's good. That's good. I like it.
I think what happens is like you go from one way, which was this real periodized approach, and then you just go to the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, which was moving totally away from periodization. I still think the trend is moving away from now, but now I think there's a little bit of evidence coming in, and I think even as well, Jakob getting himself hurt, which I think is a function of this too, has maybe just sounded some warning bells in amongst the global distance running, at least elite distance running community. And I think we're going to slightly start toning that back to where we're not seeing guys just so intent on being in awesome shape all year round. So, but
it's probably
with the 800, definitely with the 800, I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Do you think it was possibly also a hangover from the fact that these guys had to be in shape so many successive years for championships because of the shuffling around due to COVID, where their minds and their bodies were constantly having to be, and they're just tired at the end of all that, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, and I know what that's like too.
You had the Melbourne Com Games and you...
100%. I was fried, dude. Like, I mean, that was something that, I had...
It fried Mottram too, didn't it?
It did fry Mottram.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just too tough. It was tough to come off world champs in 05 or in, I think, middle end of August in Helsinki, and then the Com Games were in March. And I just remember I went straight after that European season, because that was the best shape of my career. I went straight to Ann Arbor and I trained with Nick and the guys, and we were going hard. And then I came back to New Zealand and it was just like full go. And I didn't give myself any time to recover. And then after Melbourne, that's when I got glandular fever. or mono, because my body just like mono for the Americans, glandular fever for us Antipodeans. I just completely broke down, and I never recovered after that. And I just look back and I'm like, man, if I could do things differently, two things. At the end of that season in 05, I would have taken 6 weeks off. It just forced myself not to do anything. Captain hindsight here. And then the same after the Melbourne Con Games, because I was so fired up to capitalize on what I thought was an okay performance. I'm going to capitalize on this, make the next step, run 144, and then just made the mistake. I didn't give myself time to recover. So yeah, man, this whole rest thing and season structure is really interesting right now, especially like you said with the change in sort of training philosophy and focus. That was a good question, actually.
I've actually got a.
Not that I'm surprised, but
I've got a slightly different, quite nuanced take though on the 800 training. So
do it.
Remember reading an article that famous old Arch, he is old, I can say that without being derogatory. It's a factually accurate statement. Arch Jelly, who I believe is 103 now and plays a lot of bridge with my mother. He actually teaches bridge down at the Akarana Bridge Club, and he's just an amazing guy. But I remember reading an article when I was a young tacker about how Lydiardism had destroyed the 800 meters in New Zealand. That's why we hadn't had, it's written far before Preston came on the scene, but it's why we hadn't had another champion athlete in the 800. I don't know if I totally agree with that, because I think Snell was freak. Arch. It was Arch talking about how Lydiardism, which had been distilled, had meant we had done too much periodization, too much mileage, and it was, as everything that Arch does, incredibly clever. It didn't say that you shouldn't periodize or do a base phase, but what a lot of people don't realize about Lydiard was that it wasn't just 100 miles a week jogging in the Y-tax and then hillbound, and then he was a very clever guy who monitored all of his athletes on an individual basis, particularly the top stars, and he was very clever, and they often did strides and they did all sorts of stuff which probably brought in a lot more of a nuanced, particularized approach for an athlete than, say, the literature would make you think. So I think that and then another article I read, perhaps it was a post by Renato Canova, but it was very clever, whatever it was. It was all factually accurate. And I can't remember off the top of my head all of the exact details, but the gist of it was this. Other than Snell, and I believe there may have been one other, maybe it was Wattle, very few of the Olympic 800 meter champions have been trained in a way that was Lydiard or purely strength-based.
Right.
There was a lot more in the mix in terms of how they trained and the type of athletes they were. So my take from those two things is that I think that it's more the year-round focus, a la Hoey and these guys, in terms of always having to be on and a week away from their peak is damaging. But I also don't think that a purely periodized approach which works for the 15-3-5, where you can do perhaps a bit less volume or less volume at a slower pace and closer to your threshold year round. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for 800 types to train with perhaps a bit less mileage and more threshold. But I don't think they should go so far as to be event specific, ready at the drop of a hat year round. I think it's like everything, it's art, not science coaching, and it's a lot of variables in play. But I think that with the 15-3-5, I think that those athletes could benefit from, like you said, Jason, like you talked about Nagoose and Bemis showing up perhaps a bit short of a gallop, and they've realized they need to, put some more they put some more money in the bank in terms of building down, relaxing, and then slowly building up. But with the 800, I don't know if they need to go quite as far. But they need to stay close. They can stay a bit closer to the knife edge, but not so close as to be damaging. I know that probably sounds a bit confounding and confusing in its logic, but I just don't think they need to be. Effectively, what I'm saying is I don't think they should be put in the same category as the 15-3-5 types.
No,
I think
I would
totally different kettle of fish. Yeah.
I would agree with that, and like I never wanted to be that too, and not like I was an expert on coaching or philosophy. I just had my philosophy internal and went for it. I mean, you remember I could, my probably say when I was in sort of 146 shape, I could show up in New Zealand. You know, I think that
149,
race, for example, in Hastings, you know, where you came down and that was a season you were running your PR, like, and I had that good race against that Australian guy, and Gareth Hyatt was there, very good runner, and it was Mark Rogers in that race too, maybe?
possibly, yeah.
Whatever. But, you know, I always felt like I could run, say, 149 off season as a 146 runner. And I know, you know, it's like, so I was doing things all year round, but I guess I just was never really like super highly focused on tapping into my capacity. I was always trying to like build it through different ways, whether it was like pulling a tire on a harness on grass or doing cross training or whatever. But I know what you're saying. I definitely think there's a difference between the 8 and the 15 that maybe didn't exist in the past when the guys were more, you know, true 8:15 runners, a la your Snell, your Ovett, etc. Even Joachim Cruz, right? He was an 8:15 guy too. So
I'll give you an
that's a good
example.
point.
So Matt Ingram, lovely guy. I think his kids are in athletics now down in Canterbury, was a exercise physiologist, and he had access to the lactate testing machines down in University of Canterbury in 2004 when I was down there. And I went and borrowed one from him, and it was real interesting. I'd read this thing. I was in Hagley Park, and I read this thing that Renato Codenova had posted about how top 800 types will develop more lactate from running erroneously, doing a threshold run, which they erroneously think on, say, a Jack Daniels chart will show 320 per K, for example.
Yeah.
Lactate should be 4 millimoles. But he said the reality is that if you're a faster type guy, you're probably running a lot closer to way over in terms of millimoles, like maybe 8, 9, 10, 11. So I went and did that, and I could, what I thought was quite comfortably at a comfortable heart rate run, say 325, or might have been slower at 328. And it was like 9 millimoles, just showing how much of an anaerobic athlete I was. Yet I could go down to the track and the hilly section in the domain and run, say 20 times 200 uphill, not sprinting, but at a good clip, and jog back down. And I used that same machine to test it, and my lactate was like 6. Now, an athlete who was a much better aerobic profile, that'd be the other way around. So that way of training with that on again, off again, like almost fartlek type of effort was actually less taxing on my. It was more aerobic and less taxing on me in terms of the damage it was doing than the threshold run. So that just shows you, say for an 800 type, how you have to think about hardest event to coach, I reckon.
Yes.
I don't know anything about the hurdles because that's a technical thing, but in terms of flat events, hardest event to coach, like Seb Coe's old man said, you need to be international, you need to be a 22.200 meter runner and a 14-minute 5K runner. You probably have to be a 22 and a 13:30 guy these days, let's be honest, or 13:40.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's an awesome question. Love that one. Okay, coming back on the Track Stitch Christmas special, snow globe in hand. Good question, Rohde. I've got one for you now. A little bit more light-hearted, a little bit more fun to get the hamster wheels going in your mind. Who is more likely to break the 800-meter record, their respective records? Is it Josh Hoey? And we'll give this a 24-month sort of frame. So in the next 24 months, who's more likely to break the 800 world record, Josh Hoey or the women's field? And that would obviously include Femke Bol. I think it's an interesting question, but I want to hear your take first. Who is more likely, Hoey or the women's field?
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh, thank you. Merry Christmas.
Jesus Christ. So what's Hoey run? 142.00?
What you want, basically 142 flat, 112.84 indoors recently. Everyone knows he's pretty fired up and going for it.
And what's Keeley run? 154 point.
154 mid, 154 for Odera, 154 mid. Femke Bol coming into the mix. Justin thinks she can run. He predicted on the pod that she would run 154 flat, I think.
Here's my answer. If Justin Rinaldi was still coaching Josh Hoey, then Josh Hoey.
That's a good answer.
And
who was it? No,
although
he's not though. So who is it? What is the answer here?
What was it? 153.4?
153.28. So it's still considerably far off, but we have spoken about how the women's 800 record is severely out of proportion with even what Sydney ran this year in the 400 and definitely what Faith has run. So the point is we could be in for a big catch-up period, but there's tons of factors at play here. It's just what's more likely. It doesn't mean that it has to happen. I guess
know,
it's just more like,
no, Hoey's more likely.
Really?
Yes, because that 153.28 was so clearly enhanced, and it's not even a controversial assertion that it was enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
And you got these fabulous women 40-something years later who all of them are sort of, but they're still like 1.5 seconds back, and they're all at the top of their game. I mean, even if one of these women ran 153.7, I'd be like, wow. Then to me, that's the legit women's world record. But for Hoey, I mean, he's got the tools to do it. He's run 112.81 indoors.
Yeah,
he's run 329. It's not like he's just fast, and he's awesome. So it's got to be Hoey in my mind.
I think I'm going to disagree with you here, just based on this. I got to ask myself, like, what I think maybe Josh Hoey's ultimate potential is. And yes, you're right. He's run these amazing times over 600. He's also incredibly strong in 1500. We've said this multiple times. He's one of only 5 men who've ever run under 143, 330. Only one of 2 to run under 142.50 and 330. The other one being Coe. So he's got the profile. I just wonder, though, at the end of the day, when you get out there in a world record attempt, and you're talking about, you're really looking at having to hit 114 flat or thereabouts at 600 meters. Does he have the form and efficiency in the final 200 to hold on at that level and go through and say run under 140.9? The reason why I might take the field on the women's side is just because out of the pure, I feel like there's a massive scope and room for improvement that this current era of how we're seeing strategy, et cetera, I think it's going to, in the 800, in terms of just the way that the athletes are training for it and the execution of races, I wonder if I don't believe that has quite fully hit the women's side yet. And so
Good answer.
I feel like, and I said this with Justin, the way that we felt the women's world record could go down is that the women seem to not do really well when they get pulled close to their anaerobic threshold early in races, right? And the best example of that was, you saw what happened with Keely at the World Champs when she got into that kind of strange fisticuffs with Mora in the first 400 meters, where they were just like, the pace was up and down, and Keely was always pushing. And I just wonder if we can even go back and look at the record of when Jarmila ran that record. She ran a massive negative split, right? It was like 57 in the first lap and a 56 low for the second lap. I feel like that's actually the blueprint which has been kind of overlooked. And I just wonder, with this crop coming through, O'Dera, Georgia Hunter-Bell is still relevant, Keely, maybe Femke gets in there and just pushes things. I just think that maybe there's a better chance that the women catch up in the same way that, say, the men's field has been able to catch up to that 141 level, because remember, we didn't have many of them before sort of 23, 24. So that's my answer.
I just think that if Hoey had been in the same shape he was in this year, say his development had come 12 months earlier, I think he's, I don't know if he's as good an athlete in terms of all factors and performance and his mindset and sensibility and proven track record of many years as Bryce Hoppel, but I still think on a one-off day he could run as quick as Hoppel. Yeah,
he's clearly closer right now. Yeah. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, he's clearly closer.
He probably could have run. I know would have, could have, should have, but he probably could have run 141.6 or 7 this year. And given those other guys like Wanyoni, who aren't the same caliber as Rudisha or Kipketer, were going low 141, it's just a less of a bridge.
You're right
to jump. But also as well on the women's side, I was just thinking, rattling through in my brain, then who would do it? I think that the most likely one would be O'Dera, because of the level that she came from to get to where she got and the way she ran that. I'm still kicking myself I didn't put money on her in that final, because the way she came from about
semi.
7th up to, and I know Kelly wasn't at her best, but the way she was still running 154 that season, the way she came up to her shoulder from 180 to like up to 80 to go, and then just jogged in with her.
Yeah.
There's a lot more in the tank. Hunter Bell, I think, is great, but I think she's kind of maxing out around. I mean, it's an incredible story that she's got that fast.
Yeah.
I just don't know if she's got the endurance, real to run 153. Keely, again, is highly developed and has been great for a long time, and gets back to what you always say about that window for how long they have, and to drop 1.5 seconds after
tough,
already
right?
being that great, it's tough. And Femke, I mean, God, even if she could run 156 in the next few years, that would, and then maybe she will run 154. But
Here's just to wrap this one up, here's a quick question for you, though. This is a question part B. What do you reckon the candidate to do this on the women's side, to say run 153 flat, what do you reckon the requisite like bookend performances over 400 and 1500 need to be? What's the profile of that candidate? Because these all matter, right? We know on the men's side, you've got to be, you're not going to be a Jason Stewart with a high 47 second 400 and ever run under 141, right? Like, you've got to be damn quick. You've got to have really good strength as well. So what do you reckon it is? What do you reckon the profile is on the women's side for that potential record candidate?
I think it's incredibly easy to sum it up very succinctly. It is Athing Mu. If Athing Mu had continued on her trajectory, she's like 49 odd,
yes,
like undeveloped college kid who then it turned out probably already past her peak when if we're honest, running 403 in a championship and been making the women's team in the 1500. That's how far she's fallen, the poor thing. I mean,
I know.
Those are great, those US 1500 meter women. So yeah, it's a Athing Mu type. They're fast. They can't be a 51, 52 point. They have to be fast, but they have to have aerobic ability. So it's a Athing Mu.
Because that's what I was thinking about with Femke, right? It's like, to me, the big question, she's clearly got the 400 meter speed. She's light. She's, there's got like a good cadence. Obviously, that would have to, it's a little bit different from the 4 hurdles and the 400 to the 1500. But I think the thing that will hold her back, or her challenge, is going to be what can she run for 1500, because that you've got to just have that 1500. You've got to have some kind of strength there, or at least capabilities up to 1,000 meters, because even Keita ran 214 indoors over a K. Radisha was a very fast 400 meter runner, but I'm sure he at his peak in his peak window, which was 2009 to 2012, he could have run also a good K. So yeah, I mean, it's funny to say that probably that candidate already exists on the planet. It's just such a shame that.
Yeah, I mean, you think how far away. I like to think I'm always positive about what people can do, but if you look at Femke Bol and say she's thereabouts with Athing Mu, Athing Mu college version, undeveloped kid. Yet Athing Mu, let's be straight, she was probably a 357 runner when she ran that 403. She was at least a 4 flat runner.
At least a sub 4.
At least a 359.
Grace, yeah.
Femke Bol would be doing well to run 410. She'd be doing incredibly well to run 410. She would. Yeah. So it's a long way to go.
And the only fallback on that is saying that Jarmila Kratovic-Chalova was probably, at least at her size, due to maybe some potential certain things, and muscularity, was probably not close to 4 minutes in the 1500. But then again, there was maybe some other stuff going on.
Well, the 800 is an event which is like, that's why yourself was you were a great 800 meter runner. It's the strength component.
Yeah,
is incredible, because you're running like very close to, in percentage terms, your 400 best, and then you're having to lug your bloody skeleton around another lap. So there's a real strength component on top of their aerobic requirements. So that's why someone like that can make up for perhaps a weakness in terms of sheer aerobic capacity by being strong, physically strong. Yeah.
All right. Have you got another present for me to open? We've unwrapped one each. You got another one? I got another. Mine
are a lot more serious than yours, but maybe that's why we work well together. So here's a question. Here's a question for you, and I've got a question, a little bit unusual, and then I've got my own loaded I'm leading the witness. So it's my own loaded
We
answer,
are
and
a lawyer, so
I want you to debunk it. Now, okay, so I see this a lot in my work in the field of law. So, and I, you know, I do. I definitely suffer from this. So often there's this, I forget the principle, and I should have prepared better, but I haven't. people in life who you, Jason, you talked about it before with your new job offer, and your new potential new role. People who are very capable and clever are often very precise, and they're perfectionists, and they don't want to leap into things because of fear of failure or fear of perception they're not going to do it, or just their own internal compass about it needs to be, if something's going to be done, it needs to be done well. I've jumped into things both in my business and in track and field, and that I really had no business being in, and I've failed, and sometimes I've ended up with egg on my face, but I've always managed to get over myself and my ego and move forward, and actually in some areas make a success of myself. I'm happy to say I've made a success of myself in life
for sure.
for my level of ability. So just taking into account, and this is not about me at all, it's just the closest to home example I could think of this concept. Michael Johnson going and doing the Grand Slam track. He had no business doing it. It turned out he couldn't do it, and he failed. But I think that possibly could be net a good thing for track and field, and Michael Johnson, and I'm sure some of those athletes and vendors are owed money by that entity, don't agree, but taking it a helicopter approach and looking at it from a very high level, I think it still took a lot of stones, even though it's fueled by ego and all of this, and it wasn't, it was terribly done in some ways, to actually go, I'm going to go and have this vision and do this. And I think it perhaps could be a prelude to others coming in and going, that this could be done. There's it coincides with a worldwide running boom. And the way it's done in Europe, yes, it is. Yes, it has been there for a long time, and those races for nerds like us are great.
Yeah.
And as an example, a counterfactual of, say, Michael Johnson, I know that AFLOS, or whatever it's called, with the woman in New York, no, it's not necessarily our thing. There's a lot of American glitz and glam and celebrities on the sideline. However, it is a cool event. It's not necessarily cool for us because of our nerdiness and wanting things done a certain way, but that's because we're old now and we're used to, say, the European style. But is there is this a good thing in the sense that it possibly is going to fuel other people, entities to come in to track and do something?
Yeah, I mean, I said last week, and I know that this was something we disagreed on, is that maybe Grand Slam track experience, was it going to be punitive to the sport moving forwards, in that, potential investors were going to look at and just go, no way, it doesn't work. If the great Michael Johnson, Olympic hero, could not get this to work, then why could Shane Rode and Jason Stewart get this to work? And I thought you made a good counterpoint to that's not necessarily the way things work, and that, I thought that was good. It gave me a little bit of heart. I mean, I think the biggest thing that you would or come out of this Grand Slam track experiment, is you would hope the next person comes along would be able to really analyze what went wrong here and say, this is not what we should do, right? Like, we have to be more cautious. Maybe it's like, paying athletes so much more money than what they're used to is not necessarily the right thing. I mean, one idea that I always had for an episode with you and I was like, I had been very critical of Grand Slam track right from its inception. That. Not so much. And when I say critical, I don't mean I mean critical in a sense of I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the market fit. I didn't understand how it was going to make money or be viable. You had this 3-day format. You had low, it was like very limited events. You wanted to put 8 events on per day in a 2-hour window, and you expected crowds to come back and pay money. And it sort of wasn't taking into account the realities of life, right? That these people that you want to come, and they were like, hey, we're going to get kids involved, etc. I'm like, yeah, but kids don't have all weekends, and parents don't have all weekend to bring their kids along and pay for parking and pay for blah, blah, blah. So none of it really made sense to me on that level. And I always thought maybe we should do an episode where we're like, hey, because I like, challenging myself and saying, hey, all right, Jason, you think you know what's going on, put your money where your mouth is. What would you do if you were in this situation, someone came to you with the money? And I thought that was always an interesting idea. I think that Grand Slam track could be the failure of it's positive in this sense is like the next person that comes along. I think one, it's showing that it sort of can be done, because at the end of the day, they did put meets, like there was a meet on that was televised, right? I mean, that is a positive in a respect, but I think as well, you can then look and say, hey, it's so clear the things that didn't work, just do not do that moving forward. So yeah, I do agree. Is that
Yeah.
answering the question? I do agree
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
do agree
I
that
think it's
there's
actually, I think it's just
big positives to
insanely
take out of it.
insanely simple recipe. I think that
Yeah.
Herb Elliott made, apparently in those days terms, huge money after track, became an incredibly successful businessman in Australia. You get a Herb Elliott or I don't know the guy. Is it Fran Hoey?
Yeah.
The Hoey's father. All it would take was someone putting their own money in, and no one can yank the carpet out and say,
True.
stop now. You need time. It's a startup to test it. You also they needed to have got somehow pulled in someone from the NBA or some pro sports organization who actually knows how to market sport as entertainment and it would have to be either they would have a son or a daughter, like a Sam Ruthe type kid who was in it, and they had their own reasons to pull them out where you get their skills at a massive discount to market because they have a vested interest in seeing it succeed, and you give them 5 years. These things weren't. I was reading when I went and watched that Giants game because I was just absolutely awestruck by the scale and the hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the merch store. And like you said, there's a sad underbelly to that in the sense a lot of these people they're not multimillionaires. We know that in America, how the composition of wealth is distributed. Right. But the enormous organization, and I was reading about the Giants when it was first set up and acquired and how it was a family that owned it, and then part stakes were sold. That took I forget now, but 80, 100 years, a long time to grow this incredible venture that is the Giants, right? So it would be the same. It would be the same as that. Someone would have to come along that you couldn't yank the carpet in terms of funding from them, and you have to get some skilled people to commit to it as a lifelong passion project. And then, yes, absolutely, it could be done. Problem with Michael Johnson doesn't sound like he was able to. He didn't have the skills, and he didn't have enough people around him of a high enough caliber, perhaps that did. Although that's possibly unfair too, because they didn't get a chance because they never had a secured platform of funding.
Possibly, but I mean the thing is it's not that they didn't have a secured platform, but they had a potential, they had a potential platform of funding. I think the issue for him was he just picked poorly with the people that he surrounded himself with. I think when you do this, you've got to be so judicious, and you've got, I think they maybe looked at it as like a sports entertainment thing, but I think you still had to have people in there that understand track, that understand the values of track fans, because you got to cater to it. Because everybody says, it's like this in the footwear world. Obviously, I work in the footwear industry. It's like so many brands are like, we're going to go out and tell people what they want to wear, and we're going to dictate this. And that's never the case. It's the number one mistake that you can make. Like, what you need to do is you need to find common purposes and common desire and cater to that, right? So what you're looking for in the market is like, what are people's purpose, and why do they do the things that they do? And you've got to say like, hey, we want our brand to align on those values. And I think track is just such a small community. It's such a specialized community. You've got to have people that really know the sport. And I think that, yes, he just couldn't find the right mix. And maybe it was because himself, unfortunately for Michael, I don't think he had the competence on a business leadership level, right? So I think he made poor decisions with the guys that he brought in without naming names. And then I think as well, like he just, I don't think he really had the competence. And he also made some missteps along the way, a little bit of like this hubris and arrogance towards the system. Like because of my stature as an athlete, I just tend to know things better than everybody else. And he, at the end of the day, he went up against basically the Diamond League and shunned them, because I know for a fact that the Diamond League had originally reached out to him because they were kind of, I wouldn't say they were shitting their pants, over the concept of the venture. But certainly when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I'm going to start a track league, and we're going to pay our athletes like 10 times as much as you are for winning a race," right? That definitely sends shockwaves out, right? Like people, they're like, wow, does this mean that all of these athletes that come to our meets are now going to go away to this, competitor or this other meet, and then other expectations going to be completely reset? Or, are they going to be like leveled up to a level that we're not going to be able to, sustain? So I know that they reached out to him, and he just was very kind of flippant with respect to that relationship and kind of shunned them and ignored them. And I think that's not the way that you want to act in the sport, because, I think he really needed the Diamond League. And the number one thing I would say, the evidence of that, is that he had to hold his meets at a terrible time of the year. Like, you can't, like, April, May is just a shitty time to try and run. When you've got like Brussels, Zurich, Monaco, London, all these awesome meets that are happening in July, August, when the athletes actually want to run fast. If you're forced to run these meets in like April, May, beginning of June, like, that should just tell you there that it was a recipe for disaster. And the reason he had to do that is because he just didn't, cooperate or even collaborate on a minor level with the Diamond League. So, yeah, no, I agree. You've changed my opinion. You haven't fully changed my opinion, but you've definitely. I was a lot more bearish on the future of these kind of entities before you'd made those points. So
yeah, well, I think that
well.
he's done one really great thing. He's made he's shook up the power structure. The structure, so to speak, where at the moment it seems like they're being paid, even these stars, a pittance in terms of winning at a meet or whatever. But all those meets really they're almost like the athletes. Like if you think about them as say they're a footwear brand, it's kind of like their bricks and mortar store to showcase their wares, and then the sponsors come in and tip all that, and all that's how they make their money, right? And it's so like he's opened perhaps the athletes' eyes to the fact that at the moment the Diamond League are getting away with murder, so to speak, by paying them basically nothing to turn up, and then but that's the only platform they have. So watch the space. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be next year, but I think overall, like once the dust settles on the immediate burn or fiscal downside, so to speak, of all of this, it took someone with perhaps a bit of hubris, so that wonderful mix of hubris and naivete, just go, I can do this, and the long run effect might be quite good. So it's interesting. Yeah. All right. I've got to go in about five or 10 minutes because I've got to go to Taupo. I'm playing Wairiki International today.
What time do you need to leave?
And then I need to leave here in 10 minutes max. No, really, okay. 7 minutes. So maybe hit me with one more. Surely
one more, and then we've got another topics. Maybe we'll do that after Christmas. Okay, this is a really fun one. Doesn't need to go long. Okay, going to take you back to 1979, 12 years before you and I were even born into this world, Shane.
2 years.
What? Oh, yeah, sorry. 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, we're not that young. Yeah. Well, 12, yeah. No, 2 years before we were even born. Maybe our parents hopefully like knew each other, like, respectively by this time. But Steve Ovett, right? He is now magically entered into the Bislett 800 meters in 1979. And this, of course, is the race where Sebastian Coe ran his first 800 meter record of 1:42.33. Steve Ovett is now in this race. He was not in the race at the time, and maybe that was a big mistake in the career of Ovett, particularly with respect to reaching his 800 meter potential. What happens in this race if Ovett is now going up against his great rival, Seb Coe?
Coe blows him away.
Really?
Yeah.
And so he blows him away. What does Ovett run though?
43 middle high.
Okay. Well, that's something, because I mean, remember Ovett's PR he ran his PR in 1978 at those European champs, 1:44.09. I think we both agree he absolutely had the ability to run a little bit faster than that. But you I wasn't necessarily alluding to Ovett potentially winning that race. I was just wondering how, yeah. So you just think Coe waxes him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really? See, I disagree.
Kev,
Why do you think he destroys him?
because a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Ovett he did a lot of mileage. He, went off and ran that 60, which at the time doesn't look great now at 65-minute half when he was doing a training run with his partner, Matt Taylor. Patterson. Yeah. He was a guy a bit like Cram who off the strength, the way he prepared, he could come down and be very dangerous in an 800 that was a bit more even. So he could come off he'd really suit the way, say, the 800s run now, where they're a bit more sensible.
Totally.
But that's not how it was done then. It was all pretty electric and balls to the wall. And I think because Coe gets back to what we're talking about, what mix would they for the woman in terms of the bookended abilities of a 4 and 15. Coe was much better prepared through his focus on the 400 and running that 46.8 ET to withstand that withering first 400 than an Ovett who would, I believe, have never really been in it at that sort of clip for the first 400 to 600 and would have eked his way back to Coe. But I think Coe, the way the way they raced back then, I don't think he was a 142 low guy.
No. I mean, I agree with you on that. So in my mind, the race that I picture in this one is, first of all, Ovett, even though he was Coe was obviously a fearless front runner for all distances. And Ovett, even though Ovett did front run a lot, that world record that he ran in over 1500 in Rieti, the world record in Koblenz, one of the most famous ones over the mile, he ran from the front. He definitely was more of a racer in respect of he liked a shoulder to run off. I mean, you saw that in the 1980 Olympic final of the 800 and that famous 1977 World Cup that's in the opening montage for the track stitch. So, yeah, I guess in my mind, I had this 800 race where Coe goes out, exactly to your point. Ovett at least can key off his shoulder, because I'm not quite sure that I don't think Coe goes that fast through the opening 400 here. It's definitely under 50. I should know this. But it's not insanely fast. And I just wonder if Ovett, it was the perfect race for Ovett, because I agree with you. I don't think he could have run 142.3, right? So I think that Coe was still going to win that race. But I think that Ovett, I'm a little bit more bullish on him in this one. I think he would have been maybe 3 or 4 meters back of Coe. So I think he runs a time similar to what Cram did in Zurich 84. Zurich 85, where he runs 142 high. And I think that would have been, because that was kind of Ovett's window too. Post that, he obviously had the church rail incident and he started to focus on a little bit longer distances. But that's kind of what I think. I can't think why it would be materially different to what happened when Coe front ran 78 Euros and then Bayer came past them both. I just don't think he had, but like you talked about with yourself, Jason, I don't know if he had that once he got anaerobic like that. I just don't know. He either is going with it and having to get into that really anaerobic state, or he just comes way back. But it's hard to come way back in a race like that. So yeah,
he
was a good hunter though. He was a good hunter.
He was.
So,
here's another hot take though.
Yep.
I don't agree, or at least I don't agree fully with all of the fuss that was made about how tactically poor Coe was in 80 and that cost him the race. It freaking didn't help. But I think the way, given how slow that first lap was, a guy like Ovett, that was so perfect for him, and he won that with impunity. Going away, he looked imperious coming off that shoulder, and I just don't think so. It was almost an ego thing. So much was made about little Sebi, how he cooked it, and Peter said to him, "You can't do that," and blah blah blah. But the way he came off that bend, I think it would have been a lot closer, but I still think he could have got him, which is, you might be surprised by, given how I think he couldn't have kept up in the record. But I think he's that kind of guy. in the Olympic final, coming off the shoulder.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I just think to summarize that one, it's probably the great. I wonder if it's a big regret of Ovett that he wasn't in that race, because we talked about before how just the volume of fast race, the frequency of really fast races back in that era was extremely low, right? Like, we take for granted now there's so many races where the guys go out and can run 142 at a minimum, et cetera, et cetera. And back then there was like huge gaps between even sub 143 races. I think at some point between like 1979 and 1983, there was only like, I think those two, world records were the only races that were like under 144. It's like some ridiculous number like that. So I always wonder if Ovett was like, man, I wish I'd been in that Bislett 800 back in those days, because I think one thing we definitely agree on is that he had the potential to run much faster than that 144.09. Would he have beaten Coe on that day? I also agree with you. I don't think so, but it would have just been a fascinating, like, hypothetical if he was in that race, how it would have gone down. Coe definitely was taking it out. Ovett's hunting him. We also talked about how you never know how things happen in races when someone's on your shoulder and you can basically hear them, breathing behind you, and you can hear their footsteps, and we don't know how that would have affected Coe, but yeah.
Very good.
All right. Okay. Should we call it a wrap? No
Let's
pun
wrap it
intended
up.
for Christmas. Let's wrap it up. You're off to Wairaki to play golf down in Taupo. That sounds nice.
We're actually playing tomorrow, but we're going
Okay.
down.
All right.
We're going down today, which will be wicked.
Awesome. And then plans for Christmas? You're just going to be back in Auckland?
I mean, chilling out.
Easy.
No rest.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, I guess this is I don't know if we'll do a podcast next week because of the Christmas period. We'll chat, but
There we go. Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how we go. Maybe we can do a week off. I think this is our 20th official podcast, so congratulations.
Nice.
We still don't have a podcast sponsor yet. But we had a fleeting 1 week sponsorship with Para Rubber Pools and Taraka.
We were like Michael Johnson. We got burned. We couldn't overpromise and under-delivered.
Wasn't renewed. Okay. Well, yeah, if we don't see you next week, Shano, I'm sure we'll be texting you anyway, but Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to the 57 viewers that watch the podcast. I hope everyone has a good, relaxing period. And and enjoys their presents the same way we enjoyed opening our presents today on the pod.
Very good, mate.
All right, mate. Have a good one. Peace. See you, mate.